Bringing people and communities together on seclosounds.org.
Your listening station.
Hi, I'm Terry Sullivan and welcome to this week's Sticks radio show here on Seclo Sounds. Hope you're well this Easter's Monday. I hope you managed to get all the jobs done over the weekend and you can sit back and relax and listen to the show for the next hour. On the show today I've got wildlife photographer and TV presenter Gordon Buchanan. He's on later on in the show. But my first guest today is a comedian. He's coming to the stables. He'll talk about that in a few minutes. His name is Stuart Goldsmith. We're going to be talking to him in a few minutes after we heard from The Art of Noise and Tom Jones and a song called Kiss.
You don't have to be beautiful to turn me on. I just need your body, baby, from dusk till dawn. You don't need experience to turn me out. You just leave it all up to me. I'll show you what it's all about. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss. You gotta not talk dirty, baby, if you wanna impress me. You can't be too flirty, mama. I know how to undress me. Let me be your fantasy, and maybe you could be mine. You just leave it all up to me. We can have a good time. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kid. Think I better dance now. Your shoe size, maybe we could do the twirl. You don't have to watch Dynasty to have an attitude. You gotta leave it all up to me. My love will be your food. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss.
My first guest on the show today is a gentleman called Stuart Goldsmith. He's an English actor, stand-up comic and street performer. Good morning, Stuart.
Good morning to you. How you doing?
I'm great. We'll talk about your show. You're doing a show coming to the stables. We'll talk about that in a little while. But I must ask, how did you get into comedy?
Well, I mean, you mentioned there, I used to be a street performer, so that was my route into it, which is quite unusual, I think, as comics go. I think most comedians started off working in the back and getting annoyed at the customers. And I actually got into it when I was 16, I think I did my first street show. I accidentally learned the secret of how to walk on broken glass. Me and my mate saw someone do it and went, we think we know how that's done. So we went and tried it, and we were right. And so we went off and did street shows in Stratford-upon-Avon, where we lived at the time. And then that kind of evolved over the years into, bits of juggling and walking on a tightrope and stuff like that. But it was always, my favourite bits of the shows were always the bits where we'd get a big crowd, and then in between the tricks, I'd just be talking nonsense to them. And then eventually, after 10 years of that, I thought, I've just got to try doing a stand-up gig. I've got to give it a go. And so I did.
And it's hard work, because you're out there on your own. When you're with other people in other shows and in in a band and all that, because obviously a lot of the guests I have are in members of bands. When you're out there on your own, on that stage, it's a very lonely place, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I was thinking this morning, it's not dissimilar. Embarking on your first tour as a stand-up comedian, because obviously it's very lonely being a stand-up, as you say, just on stage on your own. But often you'll be in a commercial club environment on a weekend. There'll be a compere, 3 or 4 other acts. Embarking on your first tour and just diving in and trusting that there will be an audience is not dissimilar to walking out with a suitcase full of daft props in Covent Garden 20 years ago. No. So you really just got to believe in yourself and then jump off.
Because Covent Garden's quite great for that. There's Covent Garden, then there's a place in America, down at Key West, they do the similar sort of thing. And
have you been there? Yeah.
I have indeed.
It's one of the few functional pitches in America, I think. There's one in Boston, there's Key West in Florida, and there's Washington Square.
Oh, is that? I've only ever been to Mallory Square in Key West, and I saw when I was there, I saw a gentleman juggling 3 bowling balls. 10p bowling balls, which I couldn't even list 10 free. And then the same guy juggled a knife, a scythe, and I think it was an axe as well. And I thought, well, this bloke's a clown, so I kept well away from him. So
yeah, well, I could probably already from that description alone, I can think of one of 3 or 4 people he'd be, all of which I know. It's a very small community, a very tight knit community.
Is it?
That's one of the most exciting things about doing street shows.
Yeah.
Is that not only are you going out, excuse me, well, a police car races past, nothing to do with me. Not only are you going out there turning an empty street, with a couple of people in it, through a force of will, you're kind of turning it into, half an hour later, there's 200 or 300 people there watching this big circle show that you're doing. That's very exciting. The live quality of just having an idea for a joke and then walking out the door and trying it is exciting too. But the community I really enjoyed in street performing, because we all permanently felt like we were, like we're involved in some sort of international heist. No one in street performing uses their real name. Everyone travels all over the world. You just feel like you're getting away with something. It feels like a magic trick. Incredible.
Of course. Dynamo did it, didn't he? Very, very successfully did his street magic. I think it was he started off in Bradford and then moved all over. But let's talk about your career. I mean, in 2005 you were a finalist, so you think you're funny.
That's right. Yes. I mean, and in that year, that was. So for those that don't know, So You Think You're Funny is one of the most highly regarded competitions that new stand-ups go through, and it's I think you're only allowed to enter it in the first year of becoming a comedian. So as soon as you do your first stand-up comedy gig, you've got 1 year to get good enough to really go for it in this competition, and it's known as a spotter of stars. And the year I did it, the finalists were me, Kevin Bridges, Sarah Millican, Tom Allen, who's now a fantastic stand-up comedian, who does Bleak Expectations on BBC Radio. There was Joe Wilkinson, who you might have seen on 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown. All of these people, and it's just, I think every year you look at it, I think every year they've had great comics. And the funny thing is, of course, Sarah Millican didn't even win, and Kevin Bridges didn't even place. Really? I don't think he came 4th equal with the rest of us.
I must admit, I had the pleasure of seeing her a couple of years ago live, and if you think what you see on the TV is amazing, her mouth is amazing, even more amazing when
Sarah's absolutely phenomenal.
Funny,
she's one of the people who's really because we started around the same time, we stayed friends, and she was very good to me. She obviously gets a lot of requests for people want to, exploit her fame for things and get her to, be on their show or give them a retweet and spruik their tour and things like that. But when I started doing my podcast about 4 or 5 years ago, she was really hooked on it from day one, and she was one of the first big name guests that came on it, and that really helped take it to a wider audience. So a lot of respect for Sarah.
Yeah. So what would you describe your comedy style as?
Well, this is the question that every comedian hates being asked because...
I know, well, I'm asking it.
Yeah. Do you know what? Sometimes I wish I was a one-liner guy, so I could just say, one-liners, next question. But it's never as simple as that. I mean, I'm an observational comedian, so what I like to do is I like to notice things that you've noticed and that people out there have noticed, but that you haven't noticed that you've noticed.
Yeah.
So that's the real skill of something. So I'll give you an example joke from my show at the moment. I won't perform the joke entirely, but just what we're talking about.
Okay.
One of the observations in my new show, by way of an example, is that Costa Coffee, specifically Costa, not Starbucks, not the others, Costa Coffee have started opening little tiny branches of Costa Coffee in other shops and venues and service stations and libraries and hospitals. For some reason, they've given Starbucks the high street and they've started tunneling into other buildings. So then I use the observation and then go off and do jokes about coffee and what it's like ordering coffee and flat whites and posh coffees and all the rest of it. But for me, the central nugget is always that little notice. You've just got to spot a thing that's commonplace, but that hasn't become tired by people noticing it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, you're true, it's right as well. And one of my friends pointed something out to me. He says the big supermarkets, they have the chemist right at the back of the shop and the cigarettes right at the front of the shop. So the sick people have to walk the furthest, and the people who like to smoke can go straight in the shop. And I've not noticed that.
Isn't that charming? Yeah, and they all, I mean, I could go on about this. I love the way the people, like corporations, play subtle tricks on us, like having signs to tell you where the sweets are. Those are always at child eye height. You know what I mean? So I sit with my godson and we work out all the little... Tell him, you've got to learn all the tricks that grown-ups play on each other. Like, you can always smell bread when you walk into a supermarket.
Oh, don't you? Yeah.
I don't know why everyone wants to have bread. And it's the same when you're trying to sell your house.
Yeah, you're starting to make me feel hungry. When you were a kid growing up, did you have an ambition of what you actually wanted to do? Did you always want to be a comic, or did you want to be something else?
Well, you know, for a while I wanted to be an actor. I really did. And it took me a long time to realise that when I wanted to be an actor, I didn't want to actually do the job of being an actor. I just wanted to get to do all that pretending. You know, I wanted to be someone in a sci-fi drama who had a laser gun, or I wanted to be a cop who kicked a door down and beat someone up and ran away from an explosion. And you realise, I dabbled in acting here and there, and you realise it took me a little while to spot that when you're an actor, you don't get to really do those things. It's all pretend. I mean, I know it sounds obvious, but an actor, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end of the day, I don't know why I've chosen him as an example. Let's say Jason Statham, he's one of my favourites. Love his action films. He gets to pretend to be this guy with a gun that goes around saving the world, but at the end of the day, he's just an actor who sits and has lattes. Whereas I don't pretend to be a stand-up comedian. I really am one. I get to really do the job of going out there night after night in front of hundreds of people looking at you with these hungry eyes, all of them thinking, go on, you've promised you can make us laugh, now do it. So for me, the actual experience of being a stand-up, it's just doing something so real, so vivid. It's like being a snowboarder. All of your life, if you're a professional snowboarder, I would imagine, all of your life is just about those 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes a week, where you get to throw yourself down a mountain.
Yeah, because you were one of the things you've done as an actor, you played Caleb in a children's sci-fi game show called Mission 2000.
Mission 2110.
2110.
Is how we.
My eyes and mouth and brain are not working this morning, so we're
not at all. Thank you for bringing that up. It was genuinely my dream job, and I got to have a laser gun, and I got to run away from explosions, and it was so much fun to film. And it was kind of a cross between the Crystal Maze and Terminator for children. So I'm teleporting children into the future to help me destroy this army of evil robots. So maybe when I talk about acting not grabbing me anymore, maybe it's just that I've done my dream job.
Yeah, maybe that's so. I mean, who would you say is your comedy hero when you were growing up? Who made you laugh? And
oh, there's so many of them. I used to love Rowan Atkinson. I used to love Fry and Laurie. But I've always, you know, I liked Lenny Henry as well. I like the American comics. I like Bill Hicks. I love Jackie Chan. A lot of people don't think of Jackie Chan.
Oh, yeah, he's a fabulous...
He's one of the most funny, physical characters you're ever going to see. If you watch early Jackie Chan films, he's just hilarious. Yeah, so I always had a really broad palette of different things that I loved, that I wanted to emulate. And then in street performing, and they're names you won't know, but people who are non-famous. But there was a guy called Pepe Mime, and Pepe was the funniest guy I've ever seen in my life. And he wasn't famous. He went out, he did street shows. Everyone on the street knew him. I'd see him up at the Edinburgh Festival. He couldn't walk 6 metres down the road without everyone. The homeless people, the cops, the people in the shops, all the kids, all the grown-ups, everyone would know his name. And it was this kind of highly localised fame because he just understood something about the way the world works, and he just got it, and he got what makes people laugh.
You've got a podcast which is, and you call it "You're the Comedian's Comedian," and where did that name come from? The Comedian's Comedian, you know.
Well, I've got to stress this. I'm not the Comedian's Comedian. The podcast is called the Comedian's Comedian Podcast, and that is an expression. I'm not trying to set myself up that like